So this is an artist rendition of the Horla, and you can see Gaiduma Passant right there in the background, if you're watching, that is. And so on Tuesday, we will do that, and also an edition of the Nightfall. Sorry, I was going to say Night Vale, but that's wrong. It's Nightfall. And then on Thursday, for Patreons only, Paul Tremblay, Nadia Bolkin, and I at 9 Eastern will be discussing Lake Mungo, because all three of us are huge fans, and I know there's a lot of other fans out there. Lake Mungo, because I saw your face light up, fans, and I know that.
Yeah. I've been meaning. I actually haven't seen it. I've been meaning to watch that. So
you haven't?
No, I haven't.
Well, what are you doing here?
I have to talk to a horror guy.
Yeah, you should watch it. And I don't watch it during the day. You should never watch movies like this during the daytime. It should be like at 11:30 at night or something. So, and it's a slow burn, but it's a good movie. It's a faux documentary, and you have to kind of go into it with the mindset that, okay, this is a real documentary. What were you going to say, John?
No, I need to be called on, but
no, you don't. You don't. You're the guest.
Okay.
You can actually cut me off if you want to.
No, I'm going to do that. But your audio is cutting out. I'm worried that my hotel room I'm in, the internet connection is not right at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
It's you. We blame you.
It's me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Let me just see if I have anything open that's taking up bandwidth real quick.
When we did our video test a little bit ago,
didn't
have a problem. Are you using a Windows computer?
What's that?
Are you using a Windows laptop?
No.
No?
Windows?
You're using
I'm using a Mac. But
Mac.
Let me just see if I can turn off anything that might be using up any bandwidth.
Okay. While you do that, I'll make a couple of announcements while you take care of that. So yeah, we're going to discuss Lake Mungo on Thursday. We do a lot of extra podcasts like that. Patreon podcasts, 9 p.m. Eastern. And of course, obviously, if you're a patron, you can you can listen to it or watch it anytime in the future. It's basically just like this, but just for Patreons, and some watch it live, some watch it later, and some listen to it later. Like I did a Patreon podcast on Dark Shadows with Rick Lay and Stephen Mark Rainey last week, and I'm about to convert that to audio for the Patreons. So it's just $5 a month. The link is in the show notes, but you could also Google, if you're listening to this later and you're driving in your car, just remember, Google Lovecraft eZine Patreon. And yeah, it's a lot for a little bit, and it keeps me from having to work at McDonald's or something, and I can do this instead. So how's the sound now, John?
It's broken up. I don't know any solution other than to try to do it through my phone on just my cellular data.
Can you hear us more or less okay?
I can hear you. Yes, but it just has a digital sort of artifacting in it. So
yeah, I hear that from you too, but you're out of town, you're in a hotel room, so we'll just do the best we can.
Sorry, guys.
We'll pretend it's extra dimensional.
Yeah, exactly. If you can understand us for the most part, and we in the audience can understand you, then I think we're all good with it.
Okay.
Speaking to the audience, I know John, like we said, John's our audio is a bit garbled, but can you understand him? If you would comment on the side, that would be great. Looks like we had a little bit of no sound at the beginning, but that's fixed. Okay. Lovecraft eZine podcast. The other thing I wanted to mention, if you missed the Lake Mungo thing at 9 for Patreons, is Nope, that's it. That's it. So Christopher Buehlman, you and John Hornor Jacobs, you guys want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Christopher Buehlman, author of The Black Tongue Thief, which has just come out with Tor, and I'm the author of 5 horror novels before that. Prior to and contemporary with my publishing career, I'm a performer at Renaissance festivals. I have an act called Christoph the Insulter. So, and it is my great pleasure to be here with Mike and to have the opportunity to introduce an author or to interview an author I've only just discovered within the last year, John Hornor Jacobs. Would you tell us about yourself, John?
I am probably an author best known for my first book, which is kind of weird. It's called Southern Gods, and it's sort of a it's a Lovecraftian take on sort of pirate radios and the blues in the South. I've written a young adult series that is cosmic horror meets superheroes. I've written a fantasy series, which is sort of like a Weird West fantasy series, and then I have written a couple other just sort of standalone horror books. And my most recent sort of book that was out was right in the middle of the pandemic, which was a short story called Murder Bout and Other Horrific Tales. And that actually contains the sequel to Southern Gods in a novella. And then the book before that was A Lush and Seething Hell, which is probably my second popular work, which has 2 novellas that are cosmic horror with a more socio-political stance.
Yeah.
Before Chris gets started, I just wanted to say ask one thing and mention one thing. The superpowered kids, right? Fighting cosmic horror and so forth. That's a series, right? How many of those are there currently?
There are 3 books in that series. It's called The 12-Fingered Boy, The Shibboleth, and The Conformity.
Okay, great. And the thing that I did forget to mention before, something my son set up, which is really cool. Mike Downs, thank you. He just tipped me $10. If you're watching live, you can click that little $sign down at the beginning, down at the bottom of the chat. You don't have to, but you can. So if Christopher does a good job, you can do that. I'm sure you will. No pressure. All right, Chris, sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, hearing you go through your canon prompts me to remark what a fantastic collection of titles you have. I love the titles of your books. I mean, how do you not buy Southern Gods? How do you not pick up A Lush and Seething Hell? That's really good stuff. You mentioned your Weird West fantasy series, and that's the most recent thing of yours that I've read. I just read the first one, the Incorruptibles.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and that was wild. That was the premise is so bold and unusual. It's like, what if the Roman Empire never fell and they're out there colonizing the Americas, and you've got dwarves effectively and elves and magic and a whole shitload of demons that are being pressed into service by professional summoners called engineers.
Right.
And these devils are having to do everything from serve as light bulbs to steam engines to and this is my favorite, just the propellant in guns. Crazy stuff. Can you talk a little bit about how that bunch of odd stuff came so entertainingly together?
God, it's been it's so funny. Is I am very much a I never really don't get into nostalgia. Like I'm never like super nostalgic for high school or whatever. And I had a great high school experience, and I had a great college experience. And I guess if I ever get into nostalgia, is kids, like when they were younger and sweeter. But so I haven't really thought about that book in fucking years, man.
Oh, I get it.
But I mean, I guess the gestation of it was I was reading like Riders of the Purple Sage by what's the guy's name? I'm blanking on his name. The most classic like Western writer at the time. What? Zane Grey.
Yeah.
And the prose was very like I was like as I was reading it, and coming from like I love fantasy, I love horror. I never really considered myself a horror writer. I never really considered myself a fantasy writer. I love genre, right? I love crime, so I tend to like mix all those things up. And then a lot of like the best westerns to me are crime novels with horses.
Yeah.
Like you read Elmore Leonard's 40 Lashes Less One. It's a great crime novel. I love Elmore Leonard's westerns. They're fucking great. Anyway, so I was reading Riders of the Purple Sage, and the descriptions were like Tolkien-esque about mountains, and and I was like, it would be fun to sort of look at doing a Western fantasy, and at the time I was like, I'm sure it's been done, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try, and so yeah, and actually it's funny that you asked about that book. That book and the young adult series were sold at the exact same time, so I was due. Like the first two books sold within months of each other. So the next 2 years, I was like just having to churn out books, and I didn't do I'm not saying I didn't do a good job at it. I'm very proud of that work. It was just like stressful for me. Oh my gosh, I'm having audio issues. Hold on one second. Can you say one? Let me turn up my volume. One of my headphones just crapped
Yeah,
out.
we can hear you.
Okay.
We hear you just fine.
And we know you're in a hotel room, and that can't be helped.
Man, I'm sorry, guys. I shouldn't have double booked.
That's all right. That's all right. It is what it is.
Yeah.
No problem.
So
yeah.
Where?
uh-oh.
I mean, it was just sort of a fantasy high. Actually, it's low in result, but my thought was it was to be fantasy.
Ooh, yeah, we're having some serious audio.
Yeah,
issues.
now we're really losing you.
Darn it. Yeah, no, we're not hearing you at all. Shucks. It was good. It was good just a minute ago. I wonder.
It's a live show, like Saturday Night Live.
I know. Look at the cards.
Yeah, that's better. Okay.
Okay. It looks like this headphone is the one with the mic in it.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
You sound better now.
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So you were saying that was a stressful time for you.
It was. Just like writing. I'm not a particularly fast writer, but it forced me to be. So God damn it. Fucking hell. All right. Excuse me. Your default microphone has changed.
Is that better? Can you hear us?
Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to do until these headphones either charge or do something. They just keep disconnecting.
No, you don't have to use headphones.
You sound good now.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you were saying you're not a particularly fast writer.
I'm not. I'm not. Chris, you're a writer. Like once I got published, I started taking myself seriously. So, beforehand, it was just like I wrote 3 books where I got published, and it was like I'm just doing this for fun. This is just a lark, right?
Yeah.
And then you get published, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm a fucking literary genius. I got to be fucking serious about this shit, And So it really slowed down my production. When it's just a lark, it's real easy just to put shit on the page.
That is true. That is very
Yeah.
true. Yeah, I've always heard that your first novel is a part-time job, and the subsequent ones are not.
Yeah.
And that's I found that to be true, certainly. And I had no idea whether I was a fast writer or not when I found myself in that position, because I was contracted by Penguin to do 2 books right after those across the river, and they wanted them about a year apart. Luckily, I was already hips deep in Between Two Fires, because that one took a while to write. But the Necromancer's House took less than a year. So, but it's a scary thing when you don't know if you can write a book in less than a year, and you've just agreed to do so.
Yeah. And some books come easy, and some books are like, I can't imagine Between Two Fires had to been rough just on the historical stuff. I mean, for me, so I've been on the crash course of your books. Like you are, I think I tweeted this, but you are probably one of my favorite authors now. And the variations in tone, like between Two Fires and, like, say, The Lesser Dead or The Necromancer's House. I haven't read everything. I still haven't read your first book, and and I'm halfway through The Black Tongue Thief. We're with some goblins right now, but I can only imagine how. I mean, I could see how Lesser Dead just would come like quickly, and the Between Two Fires might come a little bit like more laboriously, because it was such a difference in tone and like. But there was a lot of research that had to go into Lesser Dead too, because it was all in 1978, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
The
1938.
The Necromancer's House was the only one I would call fast, because I said that in 2012. So I really didn't have to do historical research, and certainly not much.
The other vampire book was in the 60s, if I remember right, Chris.
The second one was, the Suicide Motor Club was set in the 60s, but
Right.
Lesser Dead.
Okay, that's the other one I haven't read, and that's a vampire book.
It is.
I loved them both. And I haven't said this.
I'm writing a vampire book right now.
Oh, are you?
Yeah,
I loved them both, but my favorite was the Suicide Motor Club.
Well, I mean, I don't know about that one, but Joseph Hiram Peacock is probably one of the best unreliable narrators ever in all of horror fiction, in my opinion.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm busily trying to adapt that into a podcast right now for Echoverse, and hopefully they'll get to production with that pretty soon. I hope that gets made. I think it will. They're in casting right now.
Oh yeah, man!
But
I love that book. I mean, everything you've written that I've read, I love. But yeah, man, that's that one. And also, you read. So I walk 3 or 4 miles every day at lunch, so I listen to audiobooks.
Yep.
And often the fucking thing about audiobooks kind of sucks is that I'll get into an audiobook, and then that's the only time I listen to audiobooks is on my walk. But then I want to return to the story, so I'll buy the book as well, so I can like later on. So it's like a fucking gateway drug to get me into buying, spending more money. Buying books twice, it kind of makes me feel like a chump. But anyway, I resisted the urge on that one and just savored it on my walks. But so I don't know if you guys know this or have ever listened to Chris read an audiobook, but man, he is genius.
Yeah.
Like every voice is individual and accents are like spot on. And it's just like it is, you like literally, if you didn't write great books, you could have a great career as just being a voiceover talent. It's anyway.
It's very kind of you. Thank you.
No, I mean, I was amazed by it. Because
first of all, you sound a lot better. Secondly, I have the same problem you do with Kindle books and audiobooks. And I remember Chris's books and other books, but specifically thinking of Chris right now in the Suicide Motor Club, I would be listening at night in bed to certain passages, and I loved it. And it was so good. I'm like, oh, God damn it. And then I'd have to get the Kindle out and highlight it because I do a lot of highlighting in Kindle, and you can't really do that effectively with audiobooks. So yes, I have the same problem.
Well, and I was like a little I had listened also to the Necromancer's House, right? Like immediately after I listened to The Lesser Dead, and I was disappointed. Like the narrator is great. Like he's a fine narrator. He did great, but I was just disappointed that you didn't read it. I was like, I want Chris to talk to me.
You know, it was actually the Necromancer. Because I had been at Penguin asking them. I was still a relatively new author, and I was trying to honor chain of command or whatever, and go through my editor saying, "Hey, can you tell whoever's subcontracting this that I am an actor, and I would be delighted to be considered as voice talent for the books." It was, yeah, we'll tell them. Like, well, they've got their own people they like to work with, and I'm sure they were thinking, yeah, author wants to read his book. But it wasn't until I saw after the Necromancer's House came out, and Todd Habercorn did a great job with a lot of things. And he got the humor, which was a big part of that book, and he nailed it, and he nailed the Slavic accents. But I got the impression that they were working him fast, because there were parts where the dialogue was transposed, and he got my name wrong.
Yeah, he did. There was and there was also like a couple of jarring tonal shifts where it was obvious they made an edit, and he would be like into it, and then the next like paragraph would be like obviously the spliced in whatever audio editing software they did, that didn't have the same energy. So it had a few things like that, and you didn't have any of that with you reading your books. I mean, it was. I mean, you wrote this motherfucker.
It sounds like such an easy thing, doesn't it? Just okay, I'll read the book.
Hardest shit in the world.
Yeah.
Separate skill set.
Yeah, it's totally. I'm just floored by, because like I run a D&D game, and I'm always trying to, and my players fuck with me because they're like, oh, which one of your 4 accents you do is this one going to be? And I'm like, all right, it's going to be the fucking "It's Velvet Miz" motherfucker, and they're like, oh, okay. So another Ray Winstone, a bad Ray Winstone impression.
Oh, man. Well, my next, I guess, talking about having different tones in different books brings me to something else I wanted to say about your stuff, and that is, I am a slow reader, and I'm an embarrassingly slow reader. I mean, I see people on Goodreads like, and for my 200th book, I decided to read. And I'm like, on a real good year, I might read 50, but it's probably 20 to 30.
Makes sense.
Shame to say it, but so it's. I've been on a crash course with your stuff too, and I haven't gotten as far as I wanted to. I'm in the middle of Murder Ballads. Well, about a third of the way through. I've read the first 3 stories.
Right.
And what I love is that you are another guy who's drawn to historical fiction. So anytime a story of yours starts, I'm like, where am I going to be? Are we going to be in the West? Are we going to be, we really Vikings? We're starting with Vikings.
Yeah.
I'm in. That was fantastic. I
used to be a musician, so people, you always like, what's our set list going to be, man? Like, let's fucking start out strong, like hit them hard, man. Just like rock it out the first song, and it's like, that story. I was like, yeah, that's got like a good brutal energy that I, but it's also like totally dissimilar from anything else I've ever written. But I actually love that character. Like that whole thing I was asked to contribute. It's called Children of Yig. So it was love. It was Swords versus Cthulhu, and edited by Molly Tanzer and Jesse Bullington. Right?
Yeah, I remember that book. Yeah.
Yeah, great. They're great writers, great people. It was a pleasure to work with them. And like I got the dread. Like they gave it to all the like bigger names than me. Like the because it was like it has to be Swords versus Cthulhu, and people would like pitch whatever, and when they got to me, it was like, all right, all these big guys are taken. So I took like the thing I had was Yig, right? You know, that was a story that Lovecraft like co-wrote with I cannot remember the author's name. Anyway, my mom has dementia, so I always worry that I'm gonna like lose my freaking marbles and never remember anything, just be like a ghost tottering about. But yeah, so yeah, that was a real fun project because I got to do a bunch of research on Vikings and then writing into a story about a totally anti-heroic female, absolutely brutal killer, which I love, and her name's Grizzly.
Yep.
Yeah.
It sure was, and she was, and that was I think, as the kids are saying, metal AF way to start an anthology. It was great.
Yeah.
And I love that you jumped me right from, okay, so now I'm in the 9th century, you know, and the next thing we're getting is singularity, and now we're into an AI future, and that's a fun story too. And I think you're drinking too strong a draft of modesty when you're talking about your short story Kung Fu, because I'm only 3 in, but if the rest of the book's like this, you got quite an anthology there. So
well, I appreciate that. You know, my whole thing with short stories is I just read, like, I feel like it's the highest form of fiction. A short story is really the highest form. Like what we do, we got so much fucking leg room to play around in. You can take a nap. You can fucking, like you can do whatever you want. But let me see that T-shirt. Explore the Carpathians.
Yes.
Hell yeah, man! That is an awesome T-shirt.
Nice.
Like the book I'm writing is called A Gentleman of the Carpathians.
Ooh.
You know.
Period.
What?
The period.
Yeah, and that's why it's taken me a long time, because it's like I don't fucking know anything about the Austro-Hungarian, the Habsburg Empire, or I do now. But
I was about to say you're about to.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, it's like if I was in an elevator pitch it to you, it is In Bruges meets Dracula in the sense there's some criminals who, after committing a heinous crime, go and flee to this little town in the shadow of the Carpathian Mountains called Bistritz, and hole up at the Golden Crone Hotel and come under the sway of Dracula. So I mean, I'm enjoying writing it, but I'm taking myself too seriously. I need to just lighten the fuck up.
Well, sign me up for that one. I want to read that one. Cool.
Well, if it ever gets published, we'll I mean, there's always a chance people will be like, nah.
Chris, I like the you're drinking too big of a draft of modesty line. I have to remember that.
Well, there's that.
Yeah.
I have real hard, like everyone says, like, Jacobs, you have real tough time taking any sort of compliment. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so.
And you're like, since that's criticism, I'll accept it.
Yeah. But if it was praise, no.
You're so good at taking compliments.
Shut up, Mike.
So you said you used to be a musician. Why do you make that distinction?
I mean, I used to be a semi-working musician, not on any level. I'm not, I have sort of fat fingers, so I was never like, but I could write some songs, and I could, that actually writing songs is what gave me the confidence to write a book, because I was like, when you have a band and you have some people following the band, like when that all sort of went away, and the hard realities of like being a father and having, providing for my wife and kids and everything set in, and I moved just more to working. It's it was those songs that people would come and say, like, "Hey, play this song you wrote," like, and yell out a song that made me sort of feel confident enough to be like, maybe I could, like, if I can write a good song, maybe I can write a good book, you know. And because I'd always been a voracious reader, I used to read quickly, but once I started writing, and I've said this in other areas, it became like my reading became very mercenary, right? In the sense that, like, what are they doing? What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? What can I fucking extract from their style, their construction? What tricks are they playing? And, like, it was very, and it took sort of the joy out of reading. And I've only just recently sort of rediscovered that joy of just, like, losing oneself in fiction, which was such a large part of my youth. But I lost it once I became a professional writer for years. I would say for 7 years.
Wow, that's interesting. I mean, my reading definitely changed after I got published, or while I was working to get published, because when you say mercenary, I'm not. Perhaps I should be more mercenary in taking the book apart and letting myself get out of the story, but I really don't do that. I tend to stay in story, and so I miss tricks a lot of times. I'm not the best plotter in the world. That's one of my weaknesses. I'm good. I feel like I'm good with, dialogue and setting and things like that. But sometimes I don't plot as well as I should, because maybe I should be anatomizing things more than just enjoying them. But whatever, it is what it is.
I mean,
But,
I think you got plot down great. And actually, I tweeted something out. I was actually thinking about your books as I said it. It was talking about humor in fiction, and there are authors that are considered to be humorous authors, but really they're just usually like just a straight plot with a funny, quippy character, right? But then there are authors that have, like, this sort of almost like, they do that, but they also, as a as a god of their world, they are mischievous, and you are that. Like the way you sort of look at plot and what's going to happen to these people is very, very trickstery. It's very it shows, like, an innate humor, as, like, you're like sometimes a cruel god of, like, that has a dark sense of humor. And I wish I was more like that, like I don't have that. I can do, like, quippy, funny characters but I tend to be real earnest, and I wish sometimes I could just be a little bit more playful. You know what I'm saying?
I do, but that they're just different styles, and that gravity really works for you. I mean, you go to some dark places, brother, and it is fun to go to dark places like that. Like a lush and seething hell. I was kind of saving that for towards the middle or end of the process, because that's my favorite thing I've read so far. I read Southern Gods. I read, but A Lush and Seething Hell. That is, to me, that is a masterpiece. I enjoy.
I mean, I will say honestly, I think that's the best thing so far. Is the best thing I've ever written. I don't know how it came together, but I think it was the subject matters that I literally constructed those stories to fit together. Like, I don't really think of it as, everyone always is like, it's weird how people, Goodreads, well, I really love the first one, but I didn't really like the second one. So 3.5 stars. I'm going to average this out. Like there's whatever mathematics that go on in these reviewers' minds. Like, if I fucking read a great collection and one story blows my mind, it's a fucking 5-star collection, because that one, I don't need every single goddamn bit of it to be, like, amazing. I just need that one fucking story that hits me at the right time, and that's all. That's all you need.
Judge albums that way.
Me?
Now, can you imagine if they judged albums that way?
Yeah,
That's a good point. Hey, I got to interject 1 second. This is your show, Chris, but I wanted to mention some side comments. Hector Plasmic says, I lost you, Hector. Oh yeah, here it is. Mike, tell Christopher I really enjoyed his Swords and Sorcery novel Between Two Fires. And then moving back up, Matthew Carpenter, who's normally one of my panelists but's out of town, he had a couple of questions. He says the sea dreams it is the sky was brilliant. Most U.S. residents do not know many details of the Argentinian dictatorship. Says I was hoping that John would discuss why he chose this setting. The lightest touch of cosmic horror added a layer of weirdness to a horrific story. Why specifically Argentina? Did you visit the country? So there's 3 or 4 questions from Matt.
Hilarious, because he just totally stole my thunder, because I was building up.
I'm sorry, Matt has to go because he's in a hotel room, but he's on like a cell phone. He's like, Mike, be sure you ask those questions. I'd be like, all right, yeah, okay. So
if I can piggyback on those questions, what I was gonna say is I thought it was really interesting how you took this fictional country, Mahera, and it seemed interesting to me that you inserted it into the continent rather than like replacing a country, or did you? I mean, where would it fall geographically exactly? I was trying to look it up. Like I saw Cascavel in Brazil, and I found Cordoba in Argentina, but I was like, where is Mahera?
Right. So it is probably the northern part of Chile.
Okay.
So there's literally there's been dictators in Argentina, but the Vidal, the one who's in Sea Dreams Into the Sky, is pretty much analogous with Pinochet, and that whole thing was. The whole story was sort of came into my head because I was reading a lot of Roberto Bolaño, and I just fell in love with like the way he wrote, but also I kind of like fell in love with his sort of tragic story, where he's in exile. I fell in love with his short fiction, and he was like, the more I learn about him, he was well aware of Lovecraftian, he was well aware of horror, of all of the stuff, and like when he wrote 2666, that fucking ginormous tome is very if you read it, really read that book, it's a difficult book to get through. It took me 2 or 3 times to sort of push my way through. But when you read it, it feels a lot like what most people think of as cosmic horror. And I kept thinking about him being exiled from a country. I kept thinking about really sort of the generative thing is I had been thinking about corporations as Cthulian gods, and then as these dominant, vast entities that sort of live above and sort of, influence the world in seen and unseen ways. And then I was like, well, America. I was reading the history. I got into Bolaño and started reading the history because I was a dumb American. I didn't know about the American interference. I didn't know that literally Henry fucking Kissinger, who has a fucking who has a business with a kid. I grew up with his dad, who was chief of staff of Bill Clinton, Martin, the McClarty family. Who he's a nice guy, right? But fucking Kissinger's a war criminal. The shit he did in Cambodia, and the shit he did, whatever. Anyway, so I was just a dumb American, and I was sort of just being God, there's been a big movement in the world to revealing, pulling away the myth of America and sort of because it's just tattered clothing, it's just bullshit. It's like a costume that people dress up in, and it's I would rather know the truth, right? I would rather know that like we have, you know, like we fomented a and put in a dictator in Chile with, you know how much it cost us? $250,000. That's like about what they spent
What a
on it.
deal.
I mean, like, you know, anyway. So yeah, I just was thinking about America as like we are the big bad. That we are the Cthulhian god to these sort of other countries. So when we swoop in and do our thing, it's tantamount to being like an apocalypse. And,
Yeah.
so that was sort of the generative idea. And I would say that probably one of the bigger, like, I don't have any personal guilt on that. I don't have any personal guilt like in my heart struck sorrow about but a lot of it is about personal guilt. Like both of those stories are about personal guilt. I don't have like I'm not really a big believer in original sin. I don't think that I have to atone for something someone else did. I just don't. Right? And a lot of like the internet is geared to making people like when they say y'all did this, and they're not right. Like white people did these things, but I personally didn't do those things, and I can't you can't live your life like that but feeling guilt like that. However, I did explore some of the problems with I explored some of the problems with our legacy, right? Especially in My Heart Struck Sorrow, but also with Sea Dreams into the Sky. Both of those books deal with some of the same issues in different ways.
Even going back to the very beginning, the natives in this country, on this continent, all of a sudden there's these, what they can only see as advanced beings with advanced technology, and it's an apocalypse. It's a slow apocalypse.
So there is, I don't know if you guys know about the Battle of Movilla, which is Mobile, Alabama.
No.
Hernando de Soto. And do you know about anything about Hernando de Soto? So he was one of the Spaniards who looted Peru, right, and became fabulously wealthy and got the gold. And he was searching for the 7 cities of gold in America. And he thought all of America, he called all of America La Florida. So he landed in Florida. He had this little guy who was he had this kid named Juan Ortiz, right? That was his name they gave him. That was a sort of prodigy of languages, and he could speak English and Latin, and he could also speak any Native American language. But Hernando de Soto came to Florida, dropped him off, went to Cuba, and spent like 5 years while that kid was learning languages, and then came back and got the kid, and then took like 500 men, some pigs, some horses, and the 500 and some priests, and he went from Florida. He thought everything was La Florida.
This is Cabeza de Vaca, isn't it?
No, this is Hernando de Soto.
Okay.
Vaca was like one of the people in the what was the brother's name? Pizarro brothers.
Oh, okay.
Like that were the Peru sort of looting of the Western world for the gold.
But Cabeza de Vaca I thought that was a guy that went from Florida up through Alabama and into Mexico.
Possibly. Well, Hernando de Soto, I mean, a lot of places are named after him. I mean, he was probably the most famous. There were other expeditions, and people were looking for the lost cities of gold. I don't know why I got off on this, but other than the fact that his life ended in Arkansas. Like, so he went up to North Carolina, he came down. Oh, right. We were talking about, these Western people coming in like fucking, like, evil gods. The Battle of Movilla was 50 Spaniards in full armor. They killed 1,700 Native Americans.
Yeah.
because they had steel fucking armor
Right.
and swords, and like it's like just a massacre. They
In
killed everything.
In the
And
live chat, John, just so you know, Michael Brewer says Mr. Horner's picture of America as a Cthulian entity with regards to third world countries and, of course, Native Americans. That's me adding that on. He says is spot on. So,
I mean, you know, it's a real. I hate being spot on in this. Like, you know, when I was younger, you know,
yeah.
I liked the patriotic bullshit. You know, like I remember my dad like making me watch John Wayne movies, and I loved that shit. And I thought like we were like the shining, you know, knights or whatever. But it's not true. You know, that's a, you know, that's the thing. That's sort of like the major crux of, you know, a lot of the social strife we have in America right now is like this like these identity issues with like, you know, how do you still love your country when it's obviously a committer of atrocities? How do you, you know,
and people generally aren't drawn. A lot of people don't like iconoclasts. So,
yeah.
you know.
Speaking of iconoclasts, I love that you named the one character Cromwell in the yeah. Talk about a guy who liked to bust up some pretty things. This is the Sea Dreams It Is the Sky really spoke to me personally because I had a good friend. I have a good friend who's Chilean, who's on the Renaissance Festival circuit, and he's the guy who, you know, I've been into poetry for a long time, but he's the one who introduced me to Neruda, and that's when I started learning Spanish. And I ended up going to Chile back in 1999, and I really sometime when you and I are in the same place, let's have some beers or some whiskey, and I'll tell you more about this because some crazy stuff was said and went on there, and it's a fascinating country.
It is, and I kind of fell in love with it, and I had actually scheduled a trip there because the pandemic squashed that. But Neruda was actually, I name check him a couple times. I think there's like, because a poet is the center figure in the Sea Dreams. Actually, one of my of all the characters I've ever made, Rafael Avendano is probably my favorite. I like him because he's so flawed and he's so like, you know, I love, you know, I kind of fell in love with the idea of a world where a poet like John Donne, like there used to be courtly figures, that they used to be like people whose words matter. People used to know in America who the poet laureate is, you know, like poets in I feel like Central and South America still has this sort of reverence to poets that we have lost. But we have it for the best rap guys. Like we have it for Lamar Kendrick, who is doing very much the exact same thing, speaking about weighty matters and you know, in ways that like are kind of like defy comprehension of how like beautiful and meaningful they can be. So I just like a lot of those books are sort of I don't know if there's some sort of theme in it. I was wanting to really sort of tap into a world where like a single voice, if they say something well enough, could change things. I think in my Heart Struck Sorrow, there's I took it, I didn't, I mean, it was my words, but I reinterpreted something Alan Lomax said, where it was like, you know, a performer can change himself and the audience at the same time. You know, like music is an avenue of transformation for yourself and everyone who listens to it. And I think those books are also a lot about that. In some ways bad, like in some ways like horrific, but also in some ways sort of redemptive, or like you know, like an expiation of guilt. Anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
big heady matters, like.
I don't want this to. I've got kind of a hard out at 7 because I've got some friends coming by later, but I don't want to wrap this up without also saying that the second novella, My Heart Struck Sorrow, has one of the scariest, coolest, creepiest scenes I've read in any horror novel. It's right up there.
Really?
That's the one where the fellas go out in the woods and here comes Amwara Hine to hang out with them, and they're gonna get her to sing, and she goes and sings them a song, and we don't really find out what happened until Cromwell's listening to the record later.
Yeah.
And that was
which book? I'm trying to remember if I've read this one or not.
That was in My Heart Struck Sorrow in a Lush and Seething Hell.
Okay,
it's
right.
It's the two guys who are doing the sort of Smithsonian style recording of folk artists out in the country.
Library of Congress.
Library of Congress, right? And they're specifically looking for versions of Stagger Lee because they're looking for hidden or diabolical verses that may have happened after Lee is executed. And this fucking witch just comes up to them and does a number on them. And wow, creepy. Well done.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I mean, you know what? It's like sometimes I doubt myself, but if you can give a moment, like one moment, like I said that about a collection, but if you can just offer one moment that frightens somebody or scares them or makes them like they're like or gives them joy, or you can engender any emotion once, you've done your job. Like I don't like it doesn't like it doesn't need to be transcendental, like an ending that is like Lord of the Rings and whatever. It can be a smaller oomph. But as long as that's my thing is like if I can just give them that one little moment.
Yeah.
But of course they're still going to be like, well, there was only one really great moment in it, so 2.5 stars.
I don't know about that. You have to build up to that great moment too, right?
Sure. Yeah.
If it's all great moments, then then there are no great moments in a manner of speaking.
Yeah, totally right. Yeah. I mean, you gotta lay the groundwork for those little things to do. Like, the most like the I don't really get scared in a lot of stuff. I get more scared of movies, but I don't like reading. It's because I kind of feel like I know some of the tricks. I rarely get scared. Like I don't get scared, but I did get discomforted reading House of Leaves, and it didn't do anything overt. It was all below the surface, and it might be the design where you're always turning the book and being discomforted by the fact that you're not getting to read the book in the comfortable way that you're. But there's they're down. I don't. Have you guys read House of Leaves?
Mm-hmm. Got it right up
tried.
here.
Oh, okay.
It's an endeavor. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take the weekend, read the House of Leaves, no problem.
When people ask what book would you take with you to a desert island, that's the one. That would fill up my time.
Because by the time you're rescued 7 years later, you still won't be finished with everything in the house.
I mean, I would take How to Make Alcohol from Coconut Leaves and shit, or like How to Survive on a Desert Island. That would be the book I would take.
Sure.
Right. Sure. How to fashion a wife out of sand.
This is how people turn into Green Arrow. Yeah, exactly. Anything else, Chris? I know you have to go soon.
No, I think that pretty much covered it. Like I said, I wanted to wrap up with A Lush and Seething Hell, which I want to say to any listeners out there: if you have not read this yet, please run, don't walk to your local bookstore and get it. It is absolutely fantastic. And I am looking forward to finishing the anthology Murder Ballads because it's off to a fine start. And I think you're a great American horror writer, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Shit. Thanks, guys. I realize how like cursy I am.
Oh shit, I don't care.
I'm just like
They're used to it on this show. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And before you go, Chris, in
Yeah.
case I didn't tell you last time, in Suicide Motor Club, and his name escapes me, but the old vampire, what's his name? From
Clayton.
Clayton.
Yeah.
That is one of my favorite vampires in all of fiction.
Clayton that's mentioned in
Lesser Dead.
in The Lesser Dead. So that's one of the books I haven't got to yet. I'm super stoked about it.
Yeah. I actually, if this means anything, I want to see more Clayton. You know, he just has this wisdom about him, you know, that I think anyone that was an adult when they were turned a vampire and they've been around for several hundred years, at this point you reach the stillness in yourself and in this wisdom that someone who's lived 20 years just is not going to have. So
Right, and he was pretty necessary to serve as a counterpoint to the younger, incredibly ultra-violent vampires he found himself traveling with. Yeah.
One of my pet peeves is reading about vampires or other long-lived protagonists in fiction that are just dumbasses. Wait, you've been around for 7 years and you're this stupid? Come on, you know. So I really love Clayton, is my point, and I hope to see more of him.
Thank you.
So
is he? How sexy is he? Because when you become vampire,
I can't comment on that, but
yeah,
I don't think his vampires are particularly sexy or smart.
That is a what we do in the shadows quote.
Oh,
when you become vampire, you'll become sexy.
I do love that Tom Hiddleston vampire movie though. What was that?
Yes.
With
Last Lovers Left Alive.
Yeah, Jim Jarmusch. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the title? Sorry.
Only Lovers Left Alive.
Yes, that's right. I've only watched it 3 times, but I can't remember the title. So
the Let the Right One In is probably my favorite vampire movie.
Yeah, that's going to. He's got a new book out. Called Behind You. I've just started on audio. No, not behind you, literally.
Well, listen,
but it could be.
I'm gonna get going here, but thanks again.
Thank you, Chris.
It's been a pleasure.
Happy Father's Day, John.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I got a couple texts.
I just got one myself. So. Right.
I got a couple questions for you. Have to go, John. So thank you, Chris. It's really good to see you again, man. Thank you.
Chris.
Okay, so I want to ask, besides Chris's stuff, John, I want to recommend a few books and things I've watched lately before we go. Short show today, but what have you read recently? You mentioned Chris's stuff, so other than that you would like to shout out to the audience and say, hey, you should check this out, or watched, you know?
Honestly, I haven't really been reading any new stuff. I've been revisiting things that were big influences on me, trying to sort of like figure out, I'm always trying to like capture like, where was I when I started writing and I had all this sort of vim and vigor and this like excitement about it. And I'm trying
I think for some reason rereading is looked down on, and I think that's just so totally wrong.
Yeah. So I reread just recently The Exorcist, which is for me like a formative book, and read it like the book, and just was kind of floored just how great how great the prose is, how incredible the story is. And then what else have I been reading? I read a lot of nonfiction stuff because I have to, because I write historical fiction. So I'm reading all about like the Habsburg Empire and Hungary and Romania and like the sort of geopolitical shit that's going on then in the book I'm writing. But I read like almost every single Ray Bradbury short story, because I'm trying to become a better short story writer, and I always thought like the best short story writer was Ray Bradbury.
If you could see where I'm looking at right now, I've got a whole shelf of Ray Bradbury books, and yeah, his short stories are just second to none.
Yeah, and I can always throw out. Oh, I also just read Caitlin Kiernan's collection that was fucking amazing. It was funny because I was reading it. I mean, let me just look at my Kindle. I was reading it, and in it, she used the phrase "the wide carnivorous sky," and I didn't know if she had if John Langan had like said I like that and like asked permission to use that, or if she had been aware of it, or is this like a common phrase or something? But anyway,
before I saw the title to John's book a few years back, I'd never heard the phrase.
Yeah. But I was like, boom. But I'm trying to find what was the one. I'm trying to remember which one it is. I've read a couple of her books recently, which were amazing. Generation Lost by Elizabeth Hand is a. I thought it was supposed to be like horror, but it wasn't. It was more like serial killery. But it was so well done. And I'm also reading a book called The Dogs of Winter, which is a surf mystery, like a noir surf thing about this area in Northern California that has like the best waves, but it's also outside of Indian land, and so it's real sketchy to get there, and there's shark-filled waters, and it's just like it's weird because there's this like I wasn't really I guess was sort of aware of it, but I never really read anything about it. But there's like all this sort of surf mythology. Like surfers have their own sort of language and their whole sort of like communing with nature, and their whole like the dogs of winter are like I think a kind of wave. So I've been fascinated by that book, The Dogs of Winter, and the author's name is like Tram something. I don't have any of this stuff before me, so I'm just the only thing. Oh, and I'm like, look, Black Thief is fucking. I'm gonna still say one more thing about Chris. I haven't listened to this audiobook, but I did listen to the sample, and he's like, this book is the main character as a narrator is just so fucking great. Any horror writer will love. Any horror fan will love the Black Tongue Thief. I mean, it is great.
I want to go back to Ray Bradbury and surfing just for 1 second.
Oh, yeah.
Just very briefly on surfing, because I'm not an expert, and stupidly enough, I was introduced to this as being kind of spiritual in the original Point Break in 1990, I think it was.
Sure.
And they did such a good job. At one level, it's a dumb action movie, right?
Right.
But on another level, it's this spirituality community with nature, and I really felt that in the movie. And I've never surfed, but I've body surfed a lot, and when you're out there with the waves, I don't have the words to describe it. You just feel like everything's peaceful, and you feel like you're a part of everything.
Yeah,
is the best way that I can put it, just off the cuff. The thing I wanted to say about Ray Bradbury was, do you remember, this does not get republished a lot, but it's the scariest, in my opinion, Ray Bradbury short story ever. And not, as you know, not all Ray Bradbury stories are scary.
Yeah.
Some are disturbing, some are nostalgic, some are a combination of the two. But this is called Gotcha, and it's about I guess it's a couple. I don't know if they're married or not, and they're just totally in love. They've been in love for a year and everything. And then one day the woman says, "Hey, let's play a game called Gotcha," and he doesn't know what that is. And I don't want to say any more to you or anybody in the audience who hasn't read it, because it's incredible, and it's one of the scariest short stories ever written, in my opinion, and it's all with a couple in bed and then just in their bedroom. That's it.
I might have skipped that one. I did. He's written so many short stories that
Oh, it's hard to remember them all. Yeah.
I do have like his complete short story work, so I'm going to look that one up.
Yeah. And so
There was one I read. It was really disturbing, and I can't remember the titles because the titles are all kind of bland in the sense that it'll be like, I mean, they just don't like. I don't remember the names of the stories, but it was this one where this guy and this girl are driving to go swimming at a lake, and they see this. Right, I do remember the story. It's called 17-Year Cicada or something like that, or the cicada, and there's this guy who sort of they see come out of the woods on this dry, dusty road in the midst of summer, and he gets in their car, like they pick him up because hitchhiking used to be a more accepted thing, and as he gets in the car, he just starts talking, and it becomes clear that like he's emerged from something, but he's talking just about eating everything, and he goes from like food, then he goes to like when he goes to like cats, he's like talking about like I would eat a cat, I'd eat the whole thing, I'd eat it from its head down to its tail. I'd eat a dog, I'd eat a horse. He's going through it in like in only the way that Ray Bradbury can do it. And then at some point he's like, I'd eat a tree all the way down. I'd eat the moon. And at that point, like the woman who's driving like makes him get out. Like, and
it's time to leave. Yeah.
Yeah. But when the character said I'd eat the moon, I was like, God damn, that's a like it sent like when I was reading it, it gave me chills. Just the sort of also, and it's written like he must have written it in the 50s or 60s. It's written like in a style that is very accessible still, like it's a very modern feeling, but the way the characters talk aren't. So anyway, but when that happened, it just gave me chill bumps. And then they go swim and they're sort of laughing about it, but the guy scared them. And when they come back, there's this kid standing in the road, and they're like, they let him in, and he starts talking about eating stuff. And it's
I do not remember that one.
Yeah, it was a good one. But then like also like Illustrated Man, which I hadn't read since I was a kid, and that one it's a brutal fucking story, man. I mean, it's hard. Yeah, he did it. Well, I love I love his poetic ways of words. He uses deceptively simple language that is so evocative. And if he mentions summer once, he mentions it 1,000 times. But like summer, like there's this one story where he's talking about summer, going out of your house into the fields, across the streams, and he talks about taking a grape off of a vine and holding it up to the light and seeing the sort of like all the possibilities of the world held within this grape that's transfused with light. And it's just like even just like talking about it now, I'm not doing it justice, but Ray Bradbury is just like there's never been anyone like
and then again there are these heartbreakingly sad short stories like
the astronaut.
What's that?
The astronaut. Yeah.
And the I forget the name of it, but the family that goes to vacation on a lake, that the guy when he was a kid used to live there,
right.
And he was like 6 or 7 years old, and his little girl best friend disappeared. Nobody ever knew what happened to her. So while he's there, I won't give away too much, but while he's there, he goes down there just to remember, and whoever's in charge of the beach, I forget the term, but found the body of the little girl. She's been perfectly preserved in this like really, really cold water or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's his childhood friend, and he it's just a very emotional story. And then he sees, as the guy goes to get help, the protagonist sees half of a sandcastle. And then he whispers, I'll help you finish it. And it's just this really sad, poignant story.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to learn from Ray Bradbury, and I wish I could have had a chance to meet him, but you know. Anyway, so that's pretty much what I'm reading. I've got tons of books on the Kindle that I've read the first 20%. It gives you the percentage. I've read the first 20% and just abandoned, or I've got what I needed out of it. Most of what I read for pleasure has been recently Chris Buehlman. In preparation for this, but it just happened that he's just writing stuff that hits me in my sweet spot. He's the real deal. I'm super excited to also have 2 more books of his to read.
Somebody on the live chat said, and rightly so, I'm sick of zombies. And they said, well, I'm sick of vampires, is what they said. I'm sick of vampires too, not as sick as I am of zombies, but the vampires in Chris's books are different.
Yeah.
And these are just really good stories.
I've never been I've never ever been tired of zombies or vampires. Or werewolves or like ghosts. Like all of those things I still love. I still unabashedly love. I just people, like I said, they get tired of something, and that's fine. But then you see something that just reinvigorates, like reminds you of why you loved it in the first place. And and that's so it's like The Lesser Dead. I was a little bit worried when I was reading or listening to The Lesser Dead, because I was like, I'm right in the middle of writing this, sort of vampire book. Does the world need another vampire book? Like, this guy's fucking nailing it. Do I really need to write this thing? But it's the book that I want to write. I still have things I want to deal with and talk about. I watched this yesterday, literally when my back went out in Austin on Friday, and I just couldn't move. I watched all of Black Summer season 2, and Black Summer is a zombie show, and it doesn't do anything new with them other than they're all this rage zombies, right? They're all fast and they make horrible noises, but it is that show is literally a master class in how to tell visual story without any dialogue. Because there's maybe out of 8 hours of because it's 8 episodes, so 8 hours of show with the second season, or the whole show, which is maybe 16 hours. There is maybe 10 minutes of dialogue. It's it's crazy, because it's a very quiet, silent show. I also really like, just as if anyone who's watching is a writer and they ever want to look at how to screen, because I've been writing screenplays recently, so I'm always sort of thinking now about the visual stuff I see. There's another show called Primal, which is Jenny Tartovsky, who did Samurai Jack, which is also famously had very little dialogue in it. But Primal has no dialogue. It's just storytelling visually. And it's great. It's fantastic.
So Primal's not the one where the prehistoric creature. Okay, that is. I haven't seen it.
Well, it's on. I think it's on Hulu, and you can watch. Whatever's there. It's really fantastic. I mean, obviously it's not accurate because it's like a caveman at the same time as dinosaurs, but it's in this sort of Turok alternate history kind of. But it's a good show. Anyway, so I tend to watch a lot of stuff that I think is can inform my screenwriting.
Well, you told me before the show that, and you said again just now that you put your back out in Austin, and the thing you were going to do after the show is go sit in the jacuzzi. So if you want to go do that, please feel free, and Bridget and I can finish up. And
okay.
And I really appreciate you being on the show, especially when you're out of town, John. So Chris really wanted to talk to you. So.
As long as my mouth is moving, my back is not hurting. So.
All right. Well, you take care, and I hope you get to feeling better. And thanks for being on, and we'll have you on again. So
okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, John. So Bridget, You remember
Yes.
Alan Baxter, friend of mine? He's a writer.
Mm-hmm.
So on Twitter, here's what I see the other day. He tweets this. He's talking to his son. Why do you always call us when you need to pee at night? My son, because I don't like walking past the floating lady in the hall on my own.
No thanks.
And Alan says, the floating lady? And his son goes, yeah, with the black eyes and the rope necklace.
Oh my gosh. That's terrifying.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh man.
Gosh.
What have you read lately?
Well, it's like very rare that it's just you and I on here chatting, and I've been so
Yeah.
swamped with projects lately. I have not read and watched much of anything lately. I've just been watching like Murdoch mysteries in the background while I work on things.
While you work
Yeah,
on your projects?
my Canadian mystery soap opera.
Well, Kelly said the new Conjuring movie on HBO Max was crap.
Oh, really? I want to watch that anyway, but
I don't know why, but I trust him. I like the first two though. I really did.
I like the actors that play them, and so
Yeah.
I watch it for that reason. But I don't know. That's tough to keep the plot going like that for 3 movies.
Yeah, it is. Scott oh no, I'm sorry. Scott J says found it on Amazon. The Stories of Ray Bradbury has gotcha in it. And I believe that's on Kindle Unlimited. Awake says, Mike, what a great show tonight. And I got some new books that will go on my reading list. Many thanks.
That's what
John
we're here
says,
for.
thanks for the fascinating talk and great shows. I appreciate this, guys, because I'm a perfectionist and we had a little bit of audio glitch at the beginning and so forth. So thank you for the kind words. It really means a lot to me. Couple of other things. I don't know. Should I watch the new Conjuring? Should I just ignore Kelly, Bridget?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, everybody on the live chat.
You guys have different tastes, so it's hard to say.
You know what? My son told me how to create a poll. So we're gonna ask, should I ignore Kelly about, if I can spell, the Conjuring?
Mike says down says watch.
Yes, no. Yeah, Mike Down says watch it.
There we go.
Did that even show up? I don't know what I'm doing here.
It did.
It did? Okay. Well, it's not showing up on. Oh, there it is. There it is.
Boom.
Oh, we're at 50-50. Kelly, let's see where Kelly Young comes out on. This may be the most exciting few minutes in the Lovecraft eZine podcast ever.
That's hilarious.
We're at 60. Yes. Oh man, I'm so glad Logan told me about this poll thing.
That's really fun.
All right, we're gonna keep that going a minute while we talk about other stuff, unless you have to go, Bridget.
Oh no.
All right, so
yeah, speaking of Bradbury,
yes.
So there's an article that Bradbury wrote that's really great, and I'll have to try and find it again, but he was talking about his process and advice for writers. And I thought it was interesting that he said every day read a short story, a poem, and a scientific or academic article. And I thought that said a lot about his writing.
It does.
That was his routine to do that every day. Like if you want to become better, that was his advice. I thought that was really interesting.
And I didn't want to interrupt while Chris was interviewing John, too much, but John was going on about poetry a little bit, and anyone that knows me knows how important poetry is to me. I read a passage once, sometimes on my YouTube channel, Twitter, and so forth. I haven't done it for a few weeks, but I'll get back to it. But yeah, it's different from prose. So
definitely.
I didn't know he said that, but that makes sense.
I'll try and find the article again. It was really interesting.
I don't know if these are out yet. I don't think they are, but Under Twin Suns. Okay, this is not showing up.
Your background.
Yeah, let me turn off my background. And what we're still waiting on the poll, so we could actually sit here and do nothing. All right, my background is now turned off. Here is Under Twin Suns for those who are watching. Alternate Histories of the Yellow Sign, edited by James Chambers. There is a new Joe Pulver novella in here. This is a beautiful book, and it's from Hippocampus. So just Google Under Twin Suns Hippocampus, and I'm not sure if it can be pre-ordered yet, but it's coming out soon. And they also have another beautiful book called The Horror Master, the best weird the best weird stories of Robert W. Chambers. So
That's great cover art.
yeah, great cover art. The one I'm looking forward to reading both, but especially Under Twin Suns, and especially because Joe's in it, but there's a lot of good authors in this book. So I wanted to mention that. Mention The Conjuring. I think that might be. Oh yeah, let's see where our poll is. I don't even know how to do this thing.
Last I saw it was 64%.
Oh, here it is. I see it. No, 36%, 60. Wow, you guys have a lot of. Oh, no. They're saying, should I ignore Kelly about The Conjuring? 64% says yes, I should ignore Kelly. So it's all in the way the question is asked. So I am rereading for those of you who like noir and mystery, this is not horror, a Matthew Scudder book called A Long Line of Dead Men, first published in 93. One of many Matthew Scudder stories, but the premise is really cool. It's about this group of 30 men who meet just once a year. They don't really socialize otherwise, and they meet once a year to commemorate the fact that we all die, that we're mortal. They kind of commemorate time passing, and if a member has died in between, each dinner, they talk about him and so forth and commemorate him. And it starts off in a flashback to 1961, where this really old guy is like 85 years old. He calls in these 30 young men from like 22 to the oldest was like 33. And he says, you're the new club of 30. And if you're the last one, this goes back generations. And if you're the last man standing, 60 years from now or whenever, then it is your job to pick 30 more men and do what I have just done. Crazy. And he reads their names, but doesn't say anything about them. And then he burns them, throws the list of names in the fireplaces, never mentions them again. And it turns out that one of the members, he's in insurance, I think, and he starts figuring out that the members are dying at a higher rate than they really should be. And so if there is a murderer, you've got a guy who's no serial killer. He's no spree killer. I suppose you could call him a serial killer, but they tend to operate in a lot shorter time period. We're talking about from 1961 to when the guy brings the case to Matthew Scudder in 93, 32 years. And whoever this is still secretly killing members.
Creepy.
If it's even happening. It's just a really good book, and it is creepy. Even though it's not supernatural, it's very creepy. Yeah. So if you like mysteries, check that out. It's nice to read the Matthew Scudder books in order, but for something like this, you don't have to. Generally speaking, I would. If you only read two, I'd read A Long Line of Dead Men and When the Sacred Gin Mill Closes. Those are the two best. And I just wanted to mention The Shadows by Alex North. Did you read that one, Bridget?
Mm-mm.
Not yet.
No,
Uh,
I'm still in the middle of Blackfire Concerto, Mike Allen's novel.
Okay. Well, The Shadows by Alex North. Check that out, guys. That is one of the creepiest novels I've read in a long time. And the other guys were talking about audio versions before. Both are good. I had the Kindle. I have the Kindle and I have the Audible version. But there were certain scenes in that novel, listening to it late at night in the dark, that were just, I mean, a chill went down my spine.
So you say it's better to listen to it in the dark like that?
Yeah, if you can, I would. I didn't listen to the whole book that way, but I figured that out and I ended up listening to probably 80% of it just because it was so effective that way.
Nice.
Yeah. So I believe that is all I got, except there's I'll talk about this later with everybody here because I want varying opinions. But there was a Cops versus Monsters anthology that was going to come out, and the small press publisher and writer slash editor was really bullied on Twitter.
I saw some grumblings about this from various people.
Yeah, because I guess it's, I don't know. I guess what they were saying was it's not PC to paint cops as good guys these days fighting monsters. But there's a couple of problems with that.
That's sweeping with a broad brush.
Yeah, it really is. I've had some very bad experiences with cops, and I've had some good experiences with cops too. In the weird way I grew up, two of the guys I grew up became cops. One of them is one of the nicest guys in the world, and the other is, after he was a cop for a while, joined the DEA, is a total asshole and door kicker, and it's just so it is a broad brush. The other part of this is, who says, this is very, nobody's all good, nobody's all bad. Who's to say that the cop fighting the monster isn't some flawed character? Well, I mean, I just see this as so.
Because characters have to be perfect anyway.
Yes, exactly right. And I saw this. It has nothing to do with me, but as a member of the horror community, and maybe a few people listen to me, it really pisses me off that that these people were bullied and that we're not going to see this anthology. So
it's just odd.
It's one thing to read a book and say, that's crap, I hate it. Okay, you're welcome to your opinion. But to say you can't write this book, otherwise you're going to be ostracized. Is that what we're about?
It just doesn't make any sense with horror, because when you're actually trying to make a statement that's positive, you're still showing how horrible something is, and you can't do that unless you talk about it. Right. With that being said, there's some things where they go places where it's like, was that really necessary to the story? Like, that's where I kind of lose patience. And I know Matt and I have been on the same page with some of the movies we've watched on movie night, where it gets to a point where, like, why did that rape need to happen? That had nothing to do with the story. That's different though than just saying, oh, you can't write about this period. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. And as distasteful as a non-necessary rape scene may be, you're free to, after you read it, say that is complete garbage.
Right.
And I'm never going to read anything by this writer again. I feel this way about Alan Moore, Neonomicon and so forth. I don't think I'll ever touch a Alan Moore book again because of things like that. But who am I to say, Alan Moore, you can't write anything anymore?
Right. And
I'm not giving a lot of details right now, because I don't know that these ladies want me to do that, but it really pisses me off. And I think It's really wrong. And I don't think I'm going out
Yeah.
on a limb there.
I think the generalities of what you're talking about say a lot. I mean, art reflects life, and if you can't create art about life, what are you creating art for? Art isn't perfect and artists aren't perfect, but to make a whole sport out of trying to control what is created is a different level.
Yeah, we got the George Floyd thing. Many other examples like that, and they're awful.
Mm-hmm.
But my friend, the good guy that I'm talking about, I won't mention his name. He's a police officer in Des Moines. He'd never do anything like that. He's a pretty gentle guy.
Yeah.
I was once literally arrested for walking down the street, and I won't get into it, but believe me, that is all I was doing.
Mhm.
And wasn't singing, wasn't making a scene, anything like that. And I spent the night in a cell, and it was not a fun experience, and it changed me in a lot of ways, especially since I have a problem being controlled and locked up anyway. But it doesn't. So if someone like me doesn't have a problem with a book like Cops versus Monsters, I don't know. It could be that 3/4 of the cops in that book were just flawed. It could be that they're all great guys. We don't know. You know what? We don't know because we're never going to get to read the book. That's the problem. That's the problem. So, and anyway, Matt wants me to remember to tell everybody remind everybody that the prize is speaking of vampires, a vampire anthology called The Darkest Thirst. I've never heard of this. So send an email to Matt, eZine prizes at gmail.com, and in the subject put The Darkest Thirst. He usually does wait 3 or 4 weeks to pick a winner, so that those who are listening a week or two from now still have a chance to win. So there we go. Thanks everybody for listening. It's narrow, but everybody's telling me to ignore Kelly, so I'm gonna make sure that he knows about this.
And I think we all just want to know, like, what your verdict is,
Well, my verdict
We'll
is,
never know. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I will watch it. I want to read, but my brain's really fried. I watched The Conjuring with Danielle and Logan, and Danielle she was scared out of her mind. Before I go, and at the risk of boring everybody to hell, thank you, Alan. Alan says thanks for the show. Thank Bridget too. She's keeping me from talking to myself right now.
Yes, I'm good for something.
That's right. Alan's good. Alan's good too. I made him a moderator on this. I don't know if he even noticed.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I don't think things go to Alan's head. He seems like a pretty humble guy.
No, he's pretty chill.
Mike Down says, you want to. I think he's referring to the
Ignoring Kelly.
That and boring everybody to death. Have you seen the other? I wanted to ask you, Bridget. Have you seen the other Conjuring movies, like the Annabelle doll?
I didn't really watch Annabelle because when I was a little kid, I had what is it? Hobby Holly, whatever doll when I was a kid. So I was just like, no, I don't really want to watch that. But I watched The Nun, which is the other.
Yeah,
and that was pretty interesting. So
was it good though?
It was interesting if you just thought of it as a backstory and not really a compelling movie on its own. It had some interesting backstory for the character.
So
and I
like
enjoyed
a Mary Poppins thing, kind of.
Yeah, it was kind of like, you really love a story and you see the prequel and you're like, oh, okay, that was kind of cool. I have some more information now, but it wasn't, an earth-shattering movie on its own.
Yeah, I really liked Conjuring. Conjuring 2, I thought was pretty good. So I don't know. We'll see.
See.
Yeah, and I gotta rewatch Lake Mungo and take notes before Thursday, because reminder, Patreons Paul Tremblay, Nadia Bolkin, and I are going to do a Lake Mungo discussion Thursday at 9. If you're a Patreon, that announcement will get to you in your email to remind you, and the link to watch and everything. So make sure you've seen Lake Mungo before you watch the show. So.
I'm excited to hear you and Paul talk about it after I read Disappearance at Devil's Rock.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite book of Paul's.
So it'll be interesting to see how he ties that into Lake Mungo.
Well, he's already said it's partially what do I want to say, inspired by, so okay, so anyway, everybody, thank you so much for watching and listening. Thanks for all the kind words. Thanks for the people who did the little super chat thing and gave me a few tips. Really appreciate that. Next week we have Cody Goodfellow, the very quiet Cody Goodfellow. You know Cody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's not quiet. And Philip Fracassi, he's got a new book too. So
that's great. We're going to be talking to each other so much. It's going to be entertaining.
Well, what happened was Philip Fracassi was on there, and I was like, I want to get you on here because Cody's got a new book, and it's really cheap on Kindle. It's a novella called The Flying Nun, None. And if you read the synopsis, you're like, oh my God, I got to read this. This is amazing. And Philip's got a new book called Beneath the Pale Sky. And I was like, well, he goes, I don't wait that long. And I'm like, well, I guess I could, I really want to promote you. I guess I could put you on with another guest sometime. And he goes, let me look at your list and see what's going on and see who I want to crash. So he literally told me that, he and Kelly both live in LA. So he literally told me, I don't even know if Philip knows that Cody is going to be on the show, because Cody literally told me I may just crash at his house with some alcohol and do the show. So I don't know. I'll have to send an email to Cody this week and ask him. So, all right. Thanks everybody for watching, and thanks for listening. And we'll see you next week for the Cody Goodfellow and Philip Fracassi show. So